The United States and Canada share one of the world's most integrated and complex economic relationships, a partnership built on trust, proximity, and decades of cooperation. These two neighbors are not just friendly allies, they are economic lifelines for each other, with industries and communities on both sides of the border deeply connected. Every single day, nearly $3 billion in goods and services cross the border. That's everything from cars and computers to maple syrup and medical equipment moving seamlessly between the two countries. This constant flow keeps shelves stocked, factories humming, and businesses thriving. But this isn't just about big corporations or government deals. Millions of everyday jobs, whether you're a factory worker in Michigan, a farmer in Saskatchewan, or a truck driver in Ontario, depend on this steady, reliable trade. Families, small businesses, and entire communities rely on the opportunities created by this cross-border partnership. When trade tensions rise, the effects ripple outwards. Suddenly, you might notice your grocery bill creeping up or see fewer choices on store shelves. Everyday essentials from fresh produce to electronics can become more expensive or harder to find. And it's not just about prices. The security of your job, your neighbor's job, and the stability of local economies can all be threatened when trade is disrupted. Uncertainty can lead to layoffs, reduced hours, and a sense of anxiety in workplaces across both countries. That's why former President Trump's threat of $29 billion in tariffs on Canadian goods isn't just a minor policy change, it's a potential economic earthquake. Tariffs can quickly escalate into trade wars, with both sides imposing new barriers, raising costs, and fueling uncertainty. For over 30 U.S. states, Canada is the #1 export market. That means millions of American jobs, from manufacturing to agriculture, are tied directly to Canadian customers. When those exports are threatened, entire industries can feel the shock. On the flip side, the U.S. buys a staggering 75% of all Canadian exports. Canadian businesses, from energy producers to food suppliers, depend on access to American markets to survive and grow. Over decades, these two economies have built supply chains so intertwined that a single disruption can halt production lines, delay shipments, and create shortages. It's a delicate balance, and one that's easy to upset. A sudden tariff or trade barrier would throw this system into chaos. Businesses could face skyrocketing costs, workers might lose their jobs, and consumers would feel the pinch in their wallets. The uncertainty alone can freeze investment and slow economic growth. But the stakes go even further. The world is watching how these two close allies handle their dispute. Other countries look to the US and Canada as models for cooperation and open trade. If diplomacy fails here, it could send a troubling message about the future of international cooperation. It could encourage other countries to put up barriers, making global trade more difficult for everyone. This conflict is more than just a disagreement over tariffs. It's a test of whether long-standing partnerships can survive rising political pressures and shifting global priorities. The outcome will shape not just the future of North American trade, but the stability of the global economic order. Markets, investors, and governments around the world are paying close attention. That's why this story matters to everyone, because what happens at the US-Canada border can affect jobs, prices, and economic stability everywhere. In a world that's more connected than ever, no one is truly isolated from these decisions. There's a hard deadline, August 1st, 2025. If no deal is reached, Trump vows to impose sweeping tariffs. This isn't a distant policy debate, it's an urgent crisis, with both sides under pressure to act fast. On one side, Trump uses tariffs as leverage, demanding a new deal he claims will protect American interests. On the other, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stands firm, refusing to accept a rushed or unfair agreement. Carney insists Canada is ready for any outcome, even if it means economic pain. Both leaders are betting on their own strategies, Trump on pressure, Carney on principle. As the clock ticks, the world waits to see if diplomacy can win out, or if a costly trade war is inevitable. The choices these leaders make will shape the future of North American trade. The stakes couldn't be higher. Trump's push for tariffs is deeply rooted in his America First philosophy, a central theme of his political identity. He's made it clear that, in his view, the United States should prioritize its own interests above all else, especially when it comes to trade and economic policy. This approach has resonated with many Americans who feel left behind by globalization and shifting manufacturing jobs overseas. Trump argues that imposing a 35% tax on Canadian goods will serve as a powerful incentive for companies to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. He claims this move will not only protect American workers from foreign competition, but also revitalize struggling industries and communities that have suffered from factory closures and job losses over the years. Beyond economics, Trump is tying these tariffs to national security concerns. He asserts that by leveraging trade, the U.S. can pressure Canada to take stronger action against the flow of illegal fentanyl into America. According to him, these measures are necessary to protect American families from the devastating impact of the opioid crisis. This strategy broadens the argument, framing tariffs not just as an economic tool, but as a means to save American lives and safeguard communities. It's a message designed to appeal to both economic anxieties and public safety fears. However, critics warn that these tariffs could backfire. They argue that higher taxes on imports would inevitably raise prices for U.S. consumers, making everyday goods, cars, and groceries more expensive. Disruptions in supply chains could also lead to shortages and delays, ultimately hurting the very workers and families the policy aims to protect. Many experts point out that most fentanyl actually enters the U.S. from Mexico, not Canada, casting doubt on the effectiveness of targeting Canadian trade as a solution to the opioid crisis. This raises questions about whether the security argument is based on facts or political strategy. Economists widely agree that the real impact of such tariffs would be higher costs across multiple sectors: cars, construction materials, and everyday essentials. These increased expenses could ripple through the economy, affecting businesses and consumers alike. The risks are significant: potential layoffs, economic instability, and a strain on the historically strong relationship between the U.S. and Canada. Such tensions could have long-term consequences for both countries' economies and diplomatic ties. Critics argue that using the opioid crisis as a justification for tariffs is more about political messaging than practical solutions. They contend that real progress on the opioid epidemic requires targeted law enforcement and public health strategies, not trade barriers. Ultimately, the debate over tariffs is about much more than trade policy. It's a battle over the future direction of U.S. economic policy, the role of global partnerships, and how best to protect American interests in a rapidly changing world. Canada's response? Refuse to be bullied or rushed. In the face of mounting pressure from its southern neighbor, Canada stands firm, determined not to let external forces dictate its pace or priorities. The message is simple: Canada will not be strong-armed into making hasty decisions that could have lasting consequences for its people and its economy. Prime Minister Carney insists that protecting Canadian industries and workers comes before meeting any U.S.-imposed deadline. He emphasizes that the livelihoods of millions of Canadians are at stake, and that no artificial timeline will force the government to compromise on what truly matters. Carney's stance is resolute. Canada's future cannot be mortgaged for the sake of expediency. Sectors like autos, aluminum, lumber, and agriculture are at stake, industries deeply tied to the U.S. market. These are the backbone of the Canadian economy, supporting communities from coast to coast. Any deal that undermines these sectors could ripple through the nation, affecting jobs, families, and the broader economic landscape for years to come. Canada's strategy: carefully weigh the short-term pain of tariffs against the long-term risk of a bad deal. Officials are meticulously analyzing every proposal, considering not just immediate impacts, but also the future prosperity of the country. The government is determined to avoid quick fixes that could lead to bigger problems down the road. By showing it's willing to walk away, Canada strengthens its negotiating hand. This willingness to say no sends a powerful signal. Canada values fairness and respect in its international relationships and will not settle for less, even if it means enduring difficult negotiations. Carney's message is clear: Canada is an equal partner, not a subordinate. The country's leaders are united in their resolve, projecting confidence both at home and on the world stage. They are determined to ensure that Canada's voice is heard and its interests protected. The government is preparing for tough times if needed, but won't sacrifice its future for a quick fix. Contingency plans are in place, and officials are working closely with industry leaders to support workers and businesses through any challenges that may arise. This is a calculated gamble, betting that patience and resolve will pay off. Canada is playing the long game, trusting that standing firm now will lead to a stronger, more sustainable outcome in the end. Canada wants a fair, balanced trade relationship, not one dictated by threats. The goal is a partnership built on mutual respect, where both countries benefit and neither is forced into an unfair position. Rushing would set a dangerous precedent. It could open the door to future demands and erode Canada's ability to negotiate from a position of strength. The stakes are simply too high to allow haste to override good judgment. Instead, Canada is holding out for a deal that truly benefits both sides. The hope is for an agreement that stands the test of time, one that Canadians can be proud of and that sets a positive example for international cooperation in the years ahead. If tariffs hit, American consumers will feel it fast. Prices on everything from lumber to aluminum will jump, raising the cost of homes, cars, and groceries. The auto industry, with its cross-border supply chains, could see production costs soar by thousands per vehicle. Automakers may cut jobs or pass costs to buyers, making new cars less affordable. The ripple effect layoffs, squeezed budgets, and pain for workers and families on both sides of the border. This isn't just a political fight, it's a threat to livelihoods built on decades of cooperation. The stakes are personal for millions. Not everyone in Washington backs Trump's tariff threat. A bipartisan group of senators is working to de-escalate, recognizing the economic risks for their states. They've traveled to Ottawa, urging a return to negotiations and a focus on fixing the current CUSMA agreement. Their message: use the tools already in place, not new tariffs, to resolve disputes. This approach favors stability and predictability for American businesses. The senators' push offers a diplomatic off-ramp, showing their strong support for compromise. Their efforts could be key to avoiding a trade war. The outcome may hinge on whether diplomacy or confrontation wins out. Canada isn't waiting to see what happens, it's preparing to fight back. The government plans counter-tariffs on U.S. steel and support for vulnerable industries like aluminum and autos. Financial aid and subsidies are on the table to shield Canadian workers and companies. Carney's stance: Canada won't be pressured into a bad deal, no matter the deadline. This is more than rhetoric, it's a strategy to show strength and demand respect. Canada is ready for tough negotiations but wants to avoid escalation. The goal: protect its economy while keeping the door open for a diplomatic solution. It's a careful balancing act in a high-stakes standoff. The CUSMA, or USMCA agreement, was meant to stabilize North American trade. Trump's tariff threats now put that stability at risk, raising doubts about the pact's strength. Senators and Canadian officials argue disputes should be settled within CUSMA's rules, not through unilateral action. The current crisis is a stress test. Can the agreement hold under political pressure? If resolved through CUSMA, it could reaffirm the pact's value. But if tariffs go ahead, it may show that even modern trade deals can be undermined by politics. The world is watching to see if North America's trade foundation can survive. The outcome will shape how countries view international agreements for years to come. This US-Canada dispute is a global signal. If the world's closest trading partners can't resolve differences, it could trigger a wave of protectionism worldwide. Global supply chains and investments depend on predictable rules. Uncertainty slows growth and innovation. The US-Canada partnership has long been a model. Its unraveling would worry allies everywhere. Countries may rethink their own trade ties, leading to new blocs and more fragmentation. The resolution here will set a precedent. Will nations stick to rules and diplomacy, or turn to economic nationalism? The answer will shape the future of global trade and cooperation.